look back that. I can't even believe I'm admitting that. But anyway, so what I did, the company was called Events Marketing Group, and so I was actually a management for fee service. So a lot of the national associations would come, and I would organize their national conference over the year. So Parks and Leisure, national conference. There was a few others, and the Institute of Chartered Accountants actually came to me on a couple of events, and they outsourced their event to me. Because I was tried and tested. It's just a short period of time where they needed the assistance on that. And they also introduced me to MYB. So this was around the GST time, right? So when we transitioned in the year 2000 and Australia implemented the GST, and MYB came to me and said, can you help us pull some GST seminars together, right, for our client base? Yeah. So purely logistics. So sure. I had my first employee. We were working out of King's Cross on Bayswater Road, above Sugar Reef, the nightclub. It was, fun and games. And so what happened was fear, right? 40,000 people registered for these seminars, right? It was meant to be a 4 to 6 week program, 12 events. We hit every, national city in Australia, and we run seminars for 200, 300. I remember MYB being a bit concerned about the fact that their customers would pay them $145 to come to a 3-hour seminar to hear about GST so they can actually use their product. However, they ended up with 40,000 small business owners over 8 months. They kept extending the product, right? Kept setting the seminar series, and generated $5 million over that time. We managed that whole process for them. Now, this was pre-online registrations, right? So we were getting faxes through, phone calls, and we're at the end of these phone calls, and there were so many frustrated business owners. It's like, they felt hard done by. You hear the angst of someone running a business. It's tough, right? It is. And I just remember sitting back thinking, I'd been exposed to Michael Gerber, and a few other authors, I guess from my time in London, because we also did Stephen Covey and a few others. Yeah. But what if we could supply content to these small business owners that could really help them, grow their business, leadership, kind of really help them. So that was kind of the idea that kind of I was sort of had seeded and was just working with for a while. And after the MYOB project was done, I thought, and I had another contract with the Australian Institute of Management at the time, managing their international speakers program. So they would bring international speakers across from the US, and I'd help them promote and market and all that sort of stuff. That again was a fee for management service. And I thought, well, the events were like $1,000 a day, right? At that time, corporates paying, right, for a day to hear, David Maister or I can't remember much of it. Edward de Bono was the guy at the time, right, and he came out, every year for 16 years. Really? Yeah. I mean, his stuff was really fantastic, and he'd sit on the stage with a, those old-fashioned sort of screens that you actually write down, projectors that would project up onto a whiteboard. So that was his technology. And anyway, his stuff was fantastic. He was a great presenter. And I said, well, no small business owner is going to be able to afford this kind of content, right? There's just no way. So what we need to do is and they can't afford the time off whole day. We need to go half day. We need to price at a point that they can come, and we need to bring them speakers that they can listen to. And I guess that lent myself, that sort of drew in my experience with the Anthony Robbins. You bring a speaker over, you promote event, you got to bring bums on seats. So I launched a new company called Business Connect, and I brought my very first speaker to Australia back in 1993, and his name was Michael Gerber.
He's awesome. I met him on that tour, and he mentored me.
Did he?
I've only just clicked. Can you believe that? My first mentoring kick-ass was Michael Gerber.
Wasn't he awesome?
He gave it straight up. It was just the best advice. It was so good. I still live by that advice.
Where were you? Were you in Sydney at that time, or were you in Perth?
I was in Melbourne, but I might have travelled to Sydney to see him.
Yeah. I remember I did Melbourne and Sydney with him.
Okay. Well, I bought the upgrade to a private, smaller room.
Yes.
So there was the bigger one. I was in one of the VIP.
Oh, yes.
I was in a VIP room. And I was shockingly opinionated and pushy. You just can't imagine it. And he helped me out. He gave me some mentoring advice that is solid gold, and it transformed my entire business model. It was like 20 minutes. It was fantastic. I still remember it, and I still rave about him and his books.
Yeah, he was brilliant. I brought him out for 2 years, probably. But he was so.
I'll tell you his advice. This is what he said to me. He's never met me before. You need to get, because I was running NLP events, which require talent, and you can't just be anyone and run an NLP event. You have to have a certain level of skill to do the demonstrations. I don't know if you know about that, but anyway, he said you need to get over. Let me be exact and precise. You need to get over the narcissistic tendency to think that you're not replaceable and replace the event. So I got rid of NLP. Because he said, you're not building a business. You're building something that's reliant on you and your talent. And that's folly. That's going to be what stops you all the time. And that's how I mentor everybody now, because pretty well most people in my space stayed being the guru model, like Tony Robbins at the top of the tree. I spent a lot of time mentoring people to get them away from being the top of the tree.
Sure.
He said you can go the Tony Robbins way, or you can go the Michael Gerber way. And obviously he has a very different model. He's not the guru at the top of the tree. He has a consulting licensing model around the world.
Yeah.
And he mentored me on the two models, and it was just so obvious. So it was the Coaching Institute and not Sharon Pearson, and my photo disappeared, and it became all about the business and the message and not me. So I'm always grateful to him.
That's fantastic, because that is the challenge a lot of speakers and authors have, right? It's like, how do you duplicate yourself? And most people want the idea generator, right? Yes. And so if you build out that coaching network and get certified coaches around you, then that's the way they move forward. And so, and then there's others that just want to be the thought leader. Anthony Robbins is in a world of his own as far as his reach and
there's no one close.
But he does have the facilitators, he does have those facilitators, but at the end of the day, everyone wants to hear from him, right?
It's Tony.
Yeah, and that's the challenge we have too.
Yeah, well, I've been to UPW and no one shows up for day 4 because Tony's not there on day 4. Like, I've been in a full room with Tony, and then I've been in you're not going to get Tony anymore, and it's just not the same. And it just can't be. Your pivot was very similar to my pivot. You went from having clients that you promoted for. I had clients that I worked with. That's the practitioner model. Then you pivoted and it became, I'm going to choose and create it around who I select.
Yes.
And that's what I did. I decided, instead of my mountain constantly going to everybody, here's the mountain, now they can start coming here. Mm. And that's when everything took off. So I just see such parallels in those pivots. Does that make sense? Have I explained that?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And I think the transition for me was having more control over, it was more about developing the program and as creating a community, right? So it's a very different thing to organize events for other people, right? That's a speaker management service, and you're at the, which is fantastic. It was a great grounding experience, but it's a very different business that we're in now. Where we are, we started out as a promoter of business speakers, right? That's what we did.
Yeah.
And we built a community of people that wanted to hear from various speakers, but it was very much speaker driven. So just because someone wants to come see Michael Gerber doesn't mean they want to come and see Jim Collins or Simon Sinek, so everyone has their person that they want to see, who they're working, or they're using their concepts this year.
Yeah.
So, it was really important to try and build that community of people that we could then, stack their learning journey. So if you've come to see Jim, then you must see this person, or if you come to see Simon, then you would the next transition would be this person. So, it's very different, and it's a wonderful thing. I mean, it's much riskier. I mean, it's much, because you're taking on the risk. I remember it's the first time I actually with Michael was take the risk on promoting a speaker, right? So, and I'd done it all along, but with other people's money, and I knew what I was doing, right? But when it's your own money, right, and you are trying to fill auditoriums, or theaters, it's a completely different. Is
it perceived riskier, or is it actually riskier?
It is a high risk environment. It's a high risk environment. But
isn't the risk the same though? Like, you wouldn't take on promoting Simon Sinek for someone else if you didn't think you could fill the room. Now you've just moved it to, you can fill the room for you.
Yeah, I guess if you're paid to do it and you are getting paid to do it because you're the
Got
best
it.
at it,
Yeah,
right?
got it.
And
Yeah.
that's a different thing. I'm talking about from the individual point of view, right? So,
Yes.
yeah, it's much riskier. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The risk is shifted, right? So if you're working for someone who's bringing out Simon Sinek, then the risk is with the person that's, the company that is doing that, right?
Got it.
But what is eventuated is that there's not very many people that do this kind of promotion of single speaker as we do, right? So their biggest industry is the large corporates. So large corporates have got the budgets, they bring the speaker in, there's no risk. It's like, I know what I'm paying. And then I want to give my clients access to that. So it is a client retention kind of client relationship building exercise. And they also bring it in to then train their staff. So it becomes part of their budget, right? Mm-hmm. However, if you are bringing a speaker out to sell seats at, then that becomes a risk because your return on your investment is how many people you get through that door.
Yeah.
Do you
do piggybacking with it? So you might bring out, say, for example, Simon Sinek for your rooms, mm-hmm. and then you piggyback him into a couple of company events whilst he's here that you make money from.
That's correct. Oh, yeah. No, we don't. No, we what we do is we offer speakers an opportunity to have other speaking opportunities when they come out to Australia, right?
Yeah.
Once there's not a conflict of interest, then we do that. So yeah. And they're normally here for a short time as well, because they come out because we offer 3 or 4 cities, right? Yeah. So, and they, I used to say, oh, come out, we'll buy you a holiday beforehand. They're busy people. They're flying in the day before, they're flying out the day after. Some of them want to do back-to-back. Some of them only want a day in between. So it's your business, right? And I learned that. It took me a while to learn that, right? So, they said, and they like the model one-to-many. It means they have a larger impact, greater reach. Mm. And so that is what we offer speakers, right?
Yeah.
The audience, right?
Yes.
So it's appealing.
When did you realize you were entrepreneurial, and what is that to you?
I don't know. I guess it evolved. I wasn't that self-aware when I was 20 to say, hey,
no.
I was slow to come to I was late in coming to the party, not necessarily slow, but,
I was slow and late.
I never saw myself in a large organization. I always had this drive to design my life. I knew what I loved. I loved the travel. I loved change. I didn't like to be told what to do and when to do it, and you can't take time off here. And so the real drive was to design my life, the way I wanted to, and not at the hands of someone else. That was inherent. However, the entrepreneurial thing, I think it just evolved through my late 20s. And look, my father worked for a large corporate for 20 years. And, in the last, 15 years of his life, because he died quite young when he was in his mid 50s.
That's young.
Yes. For us to stay in Australia, because, we came to Australia when I was in first year high school. He ended up quitting his job 3 years in so that we could stay in Australia, because we were due to get transferred somewhere else. And he started up a business with his brother so that he can create a life for us in Australia. And I think I used to, during my summer school breaks, I would go in to the office and I would work with him, as office manager, sending faxes and telexes, if you remember what those are, and so I'd always work with him,
Yeah. When we started these businesses, it was all fax. We don't even know where a fax machine is now. It's so weird.
All those registrations coming via fax.
We had every rego was that way. We used to hear the fax machine, and you could hear from the other end of the building, everyone would yell at the top of their voice. I won't yell, but fax, and everyone would go running to see what was happening. So I see a lot of people saying, I want to be an entrepreneur. And I think Gary Vaynerchuk has spent a lot of time saying, have a side hustle. And I don't think everybody's suited to it. And that's not the most positive message, but I'm not an optimist. I just think you are good at what you're good at. And fighting that is pain. And I see what you do, and I don't see that. I just see this natural flow. You're expressing yourself very naturally, and when the bump comes on the road, you figure out how to manage it. I see people get really defeated by that. And yet they're still trying to buy this message, I should be an entrepreneur and I should be doing my own thing and I should fire my boss. And there's this level of naivety about it. And I just want to counsel people. So I'm just using you completely for my little thing. Have a side hustle, but you don't check your salary because you're inspired by an entrepreneur. You've got to be inspired by yourself. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Look, I think that takes us back to Michael Gerber's work, right? Technician, right?
Yes.
People go, oh, I'm really good at this. A technician. I'm a really great accountant. I'm a really great architect. Okay, I'm going to start my own business. It's a whole different skill set.
Yes.
And it's a whole different mindset.
It's just,
and you have to really back yourself and believe in what you're doing, right? Because there's so many times in your journey, and you're in for the long haul. It takes, so much longer than you think it's going to be. And if you ever think you're going to be comfortable, right. I mean, that was my thing. At some point in my business, I'm going to get comfortable, right? No, not ever. So if you can't be uncomfortable all the time, it is 24/7.
And it's handling other people's problems a lot of the time.
It's always, it's facing problems every day, whether they're small, large, but every day it's firefighting, not to the proportion of your day, obviously, but, and it's number one thing is dealing with people. Absolutely. So yeah, you have to want it, you have to really want it badly. And I think the side hustle thing, I think you're hedging your bets.
Yeah.
And I think those that really want to be entrepreneurs know that they've got to take that leap of faith, right?
And they are an entrepreneur. That's what I say. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, you are. Nothing's going to stop you.
Yeah, absolutely. And you will fail along the way a lot of times, because then you also ask yourself, well, when am I going to stop failing? Like I have been in this business, COVID comes along. I've been in this business 17 years, right? I cannot believe, this is not happening to me, I don't deserve this. I have worked so hard, and then you just got to switch your mindset. It's like, hey, welcome to the, you should have stayed with a full-time job. If you don't want that level of uncertainty. And I think entrepreneurs, that level of uncertainty, they can deal with a situation like COVID. I mean, obviously things are so much out of your control, right? In some situations, in some industries, that there's nothing you can do. And that's heart-wrenching, because entrepreneurs know how to deal with challenges that come out of left field, right? And
we don't know how to deal with it. We just know we have to deal with it.
Yes, it was very different.
We just have to. The other thing about a business owner is paying salaries. There is a real difference between accepting a salary and generating a salary.
Yeah.
And to me, that's just such a massive mindset. I remember the first month, my salaries hit over 100,000 a month. And I thought, I'm pretty sure that means I'm now a grown up. And it freaked me out, because I remember my first salary, $23,000 a year is my first graduate job at a company. And that, knowing it was going to come into my bank account every month, regardless of my performance, and I was pretty crappy back then, versus no matter what, this has to go out. How's that been for you? Just know, obviously you handle it, but can you speak to that a little bit for people who are listening, thinking, am I suited for business? How's my business doing? And also to normalize it if someone's freaking out about it.
I mean, your first hire is always your hardest, right? And because it's a massive responsibility, and it's not just about paying salaries too, is you're responsible for that individual, right? They come into your workplace every day. You need to create an environment for them to thrive, and they've got families and they've got lives, and they are relying on you. They are your responsibility. So it's more than just that. And that's the stuff you have to take on. We were up at 15, 16 just before COVID hit. We're now back down to 7 and 8. It's the biggest expense in your business too, right? So again, you really have to have belief in what you're doing and where you're going, because you're not necessarily going to get the returns straight away, right? It's a long game. It's a long game.
It is. It's a marathon. Being a business owner is absolutely a marathon with stacks of sprints in there just to keep you alert.
Absolutely. And you've got to lose it, it's I think we fall trap of like, well, this is kind of coming out of your own pocket as a business owner, but I think there's a shift. So at some point you shift mentally of like, I own my job, right? And everything that goes with it, to a growth mindset, whereas your business and yourself are separate. And I think there's a transitional period where that happens. And it might happen quicker for some people. It might be five years into business where you kind of go, okay, my business is separate to me, right? And therefore paying salaries and managing team and all that comes very separate to you. I mean, have you had that experience?
Talk about that a little bit more in terms of what?
In terms of the way you view your business, right? So when you first start out, you are your business, right? And it's a job, right? So what I did was I replaced my job, but yes, I'm in control, right? So I'm in control of my job, what I do. You hire your first person, you still are in that. I'm hiring first person, I'm choosing to hire this person, et cetera, et cetera. But this is all, I'm paying that person out of my own pocket. It's a personal, it's a personal transaction. However,
more than 5 years, Karen.
Well, whatever that point is, right? Whatever that point is.
But now the business is not me. I haven't worked in my business in 7 or 8 years. So I don't have any day-to-day in my business at all. And it is one of the businesses I own. But it is my most creative place to play, which is where all of me gets to dive in. But when I started out, everything was personal. But that was also my growth as well. Everything was personal. If someone quit, it was personal. Hiring someone was very personal reflection of me. It wasn't just whether or not I was good at recruitment, which I don't think I'm still good at. Everything was just a measure of who I was and how I was growing. Whereas now the business can grow and succeed without my personal growth reliant. So my business isn't reliant on me growing or me being always on my game. There's a tremendous freedom to that in terms of the decisions I can make regarding it.
Yep.
Because I'm not waking up and merely thinking about the decision I made yesterday that's impacting today. I have a bit more perspective, thank goodness.
Sure. But is that true that your business, your business is growing irrespective of your growth? I mean, do you
not run my business now?
Right. So you're completely separate from your
business.
I
have a separate CEO and management team.
Yeah. Because I brought in a CEO, and the reason why I ask is I brought in a CEO, last year, but I still feel that it's a growth period for me too, because I've been the CEO of my business for 15 years.
The transition was freaking horrible.
Right. So the transition's hard.
My husband, I hated him for 2 years. You'll never understand it as much as I am. It's just awful, that transition.
Yeah, it's challenging.
I'm going to say awful. For me, it was awful because no one got it the way I got it. It was never going to be done the way I did it. There's so much they don't get. Now I'm not doing it. And that's when I learned I'm not actually that controlling. Whereas everybody had been telling me for years I'm really controlling. And I learned, actually, I'm not. I just love things being done well. And let's go for that. And if I'm not running it, you've got to learn what doing well is. But I didn't do it prettily, that transition. I did it ugly.
Right.
I did it badly.
It's been a massive learning journey for me.
Hard.
But it's a growth. I see that as a growth for me as well. So that's why I was kind of interested, because even though I've handed over to CEO, I still feel that in my capacity to do that and transition out, not that I'm transitioning out, I'm very much, I get to do the stuff that I really want to do, which is the program development and that type of thing. And I'm very much involved in the strategic direction of the business. But that still requires growth from me in order to be able to manage that CEO relationship, right? And for me to step back for the same, he's like, oh, that's not the way.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's why I just wonder, is it just a different line of growth?
It is a different type of growth. It's not personal now. I've thought about this before. I think I'm just playing to a different skill set now. And I don't know if it's growth because I could have always had these skill sets. Now I'm playing to the skill set around strategy and creativity and and seeing the future differently. I suspect those skill sets were there, but now I get to magnify them and elevate them to the front running.
Sure.
Whereas before it was bushfire management, getting out of the weeds, trying to macro-manage, getting the performance reviews done. It was very much in it. But now the skill sets, I think, are all on it.
Yes.
And it's playing to my strengths because I'm much better off not in it. My strength was not in it. I did it because I'm bloody minded and I don't quit and fuck the obstacles, and everything that makes me probably quite dysfunctional is why TCI became what it is. More power to me. And now I don't have to play to that because I can get too obsessive and way too addicted to solving the problems. And so having more macro view is much healthier, I think, for everybody involved. Yeah.
That's a great piece of self-awareness though, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah. Very content knowing that. And also I think it's having the right person, Karen. If your CEO isn't the person who wants to learn and understand the DNA, the secret sauce that you have poured into this, and they think the secret sauce doesn't matter, then the translation is just too big. There's just two languages. I failed by hiring 3 CEOs that didn't work out before JP came in. And each of them failed for the same reasons in different ways. They weren't prepared to learn what the secret sauce was. They thought they could just bring everything they'd learned from the DNA of their previous company where they were a success and just plug it in to this very unique culture. And that failed. One of them failed in 90 days. And they were going to fail because they literally thought they could bring bureaucratic thinking to an entrepreneurial, functional, flowing matrix business.
Sure.
So having that right person matters so much, someone you can partner with and trust enough to let go. Because I didn't let go with them. I was hovering and I was there because I could see the failing that was coming. One of them managed to drive up bad debt, $1 million of bad debt in 90 days whilst telling me it's not their fault.
Right.
That's how ineffective I was at recruiting and getting someone who understood what a partnership meant and what that trust meant. So I think having the right person, I don't think everybody lands on that right person. I look at all the companies around the world that have not succeeded their first time with the CEO choice, and I think I'm going to give myself a break there as well. What do you think?
It's the most important decision you will make in your business. It is the most important. And I don't know whether I just got lucky first time around, but I have made mistakes in hires, and I've always known, I've got all the theory in my head. It's playing out practically, right? So I knew how important, and I really want it to work, right? And so because I wanted to play to my strengths, right? That's what they say as CEO, you play to your strengths, and you hire for your weaknesses. And because we wanted to go digitally, and I knew Trent for a long time. We'd actually, he'd been to, all of our events. We used his business as a case study, et cetera, et cetera. So, and then really it's me, and his expertise is going into businesses and growing them and scaling them. Right. So, and he's done that over and over again. And so, when we met, he was, in between, and I just, we were halfway through and we were just catching up CEO to CEO. And he was in between and he's telling me what he's looking for. And I went, oh my gosh, you're it. And he just looked at me. I said, no, you're it. You're my next CEO. You're my first CEO, not only my next one.
Yeah.
And, it was just this light bulb moment in the middle of a casual kind of catch up because I hadn't seen him in a couple of years. And and I guess for me, I really, I wanted to be the best kind of founder I could be in transitioning over. And yes, I failed a lot of times, because that letting go thing. And I know, and as I keep saying, what can I do better? What can I do better to support you? What can I do better to support you? But that's also me knowing that I have the right person and what we need to do. But there's always got to be a little bit of tension between, because you've got to operate this business, right? And but the trust is a big thing. It's a big thing. And I think the value system's got to be the same. But I did know Trent for a while, so
I knew JP.
See what he's capable of, right? Sorry?
I knew JP for a while.
Oh yes, there you go. You bring your husband in. That was a brave move. That was a brave move.
It was also a desperate move. I was really burnt out. We'd been through some really tough times a few years ago, about 2012, 2013, and I just needed a break. And I'd built a business where I couldn't see I could have a break. And I was walking along one day to JP and having my usual whinge, and I started listing all the characteristics of the ideal CEO. And I'm listing them. You're hired. And that was it. He went in the next day and I did not. And that was it. Because as you say, hire the person who complements. So you don't want to hire the person who's the same as you. That's not a strong founder decision. It's got to be complementary. And he absolutely is. And the timing, transitioning, I couldn't believe it. I said, that's it, you're hired. And he went in the next day. But it was brave and it was a little bit desperation because I needed to find a different way to be in my business that was more functional, because I could do the numbers, but it was all of me. And well, I felt it was all of me. Sure. Knowing now it would never needed that. So yeah, I think now on reflection, there was a lot of growth in that, knowing what I didn't need to do or be, which has been a huge part of my growth. Thank goodness. Karen, thank you so much for being on our podcast, Perspectives. You're amazing.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. So congratulations to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.